Hey, good evening, everyone. So I'm gonna focus on a very particular technique, customer development, aka polishing the problem, not the solution, is the way that I frame this for myself. Why would they call it something like customer development? It's not sales. It's got nothing to do with selling. Why would they come up with such a term? So customer development as opposed to product development. Okay, there was a counter to a bad habit that people had where they did product development. They would lock themselves up in a room and polish the product, polish the solution, build features, stay in the building, as opposed to getting out and immersing themselves constantly. Startups win by doing this, but big businesses need to do this as well if they want to keep on succeeding in the market and keep their edge. And so the product development was the problem. So customer development fixes that. The way you do this, a lot of different techniques, but in my view, step one, you read this book. I taught customer development. I paid for overseas courses to learn customer development, specifically customer interviews as a primary technique. I knew about this book and I only read it last year. And I regret not having read it earlier because it's the most dense, most simplest. It is one of the original people as well on this topic. I cannot recommend this book. I mean, step two is you read it again. So if you don't have time to read, well, you're going to have to make time. So you're going to have to learn a lot of things, but it is on Audible. So I listen to things as well. So you can listen to this. It's a very short, because he doesn't beat around the bush, because he's so dense, you can see it's a quick listen. You can listen to it in 1 or 2 days if you're driving around and that sort of thing. I cannot recommend this book enough, and a lot of what I'm going to be talking about comes from things that I think are very well summarized in this book. So let's talk about how do you speak to customers as in prospective customers, because they might not be your existing customers, but you can speak to them as well. You don't want to speak to them, you actually want to listen to them, which means that you need to interview them correctly, which also means that you need to find them. So bulk of my talk is going to be on the interviewing side of things. And I'll use a couple of examples from one of the startups over here, just to make it a bit more concrete. So there are some principles. You don't want to talk about your idea or your solution or your offering. You're not selling, you're really talking about their life. It's all about them. It's really being customer centric. Remember, it's about the problem, not the solution. So you want to ask specifics about the past. You want to actually learn about actual problems they have and actual behavior. You really want to avoid fishing for compliments. And we don't know we're doing this, but you don't want to avoid the pain. You don't want to ask about general opinions or anything that they think they would do in the future. You want to talk less and listen more. So you ask very open-ended questions, very much like what you would do if you were doing a qualitative study in university or ethnographic research. So very similar principles. This is just much more, I think, practically provided in that book. Bad questions to ask. Do you think this is a good idea? You're a business, you're looking for graduates. Don't you think it'd be cool if there was a platform that you could use to do? You're wasting your time, because whatever people say, it's so biased, it means very little. Whatever their opinions are is just play compliments. You can't really do anything about that. It doesn't tell you about their problem. Their job is to tell you about their problem. Your job is to come with a solution. But you buy a product that did X, Y, Z, useless. How much would you pay for X, Y, Z? Useless. What people say they would pay has got nothing to do with even whether they would pay at all. So would you pay for an X that did Y? Useless. Good questions is, why do you bother? So one of the founders here has a business that looks to change the way in which we can buy water. So you would want to ask them, you would want to ask someone, do you buy water? So you would qualify them. And if they say no, you would ask, why not? But if they say yes, they would say, why do you bother? You could use different wording, but the point is that you want to get behind their motivations, right? If you go and look at the business model canvas, and that value proposition explodes into a value proposition canvas where we look at the persona, the target segment that you're serving, and you want to get into the idea, what problem are they solving? What's their job to be done? What's their need? What's their pain they're experiencing? You want to get behind the motivation, because the solution will change if you want to target certain people better than other people do. initially that have a certain motivation. So it will also expand other opportunities within that space. And in terms of the implications, you want to say, well, what happens if you don't get your work? Then that's the implication, because some problems, are not really worth solving. There are problems, but solving them is not, if people say, well, then I just drink the tap water, big deal, but but a lot of people say, no, for me, it's a huge problem. I just can't drink the tap water. I've got a problem, or whatever the case is. It points to where the biggest pain is, and potentially a good starting market that would be very eager to adopt your product early on and pay for it. So then you want to get into specific. If say they buy water, you want to say, when was the last time you bought water? I bought water last Thursday. Okay, tell me about that. You want them to walk you through that. Okay, so where did you go? Because if you ask them, how often do you buy water? People might say, I buy water weekly. And then you ask, when's the last time, that you went to gym, or that you ate a carrot thing, or that you bought water? And they go, oh yeah, I didn't go last week and I didn't go the week before that. I actually went 3 weeks ago. So there's the truth. They buy once a month. And you repeat this process. So when you find out that they said, no, we bought water last week. So, okay, what did you do? I said, well, I went to the local grocery store. Which one? And why do you go to that one? I just go there normally. So it was incidental. They happened to go there. There was water, so they bought it over there. They didn't seek out a particular water spot. What time did you go? No, 7 o'clock at night. Oh, okay. So after hour access seems to be important. People don't go and drive and buy their water at 10 o'clock in the morning. So you start building a picture of what people do, and it gives you more things when you ask concretely, what did you do? What container did you take? How much did you buy? What did you do with it when you got home? Maybe distribution of the water is a problem. Maybe it messed in the car. Maybe, there's so many things on the whole customer journey that you can pick up when you ask about, tell me about the last time. This is the thing I use the most when I do early stage things like this. And then what else have you tried? Well, I had a filter at home, but it was expensive, or it broke. Or you can look at those, because those are alternatives. You're competing with that, and you need to proposition, and they give you words that you use in your messaging. When you put out a landing page, or when you put out these things, the wording that you use comes from these interviews. That's why it's so important, because it resonates with people. It helps you to speak their language. And then what do you do? What do you do to deal with it now? So if they're not solving the problem right now, what are they doing? Sometimes it shows you again how important the problem is and what their current pain is. Because if you can replace current pain with current gain, it's great. Just to note that, I'll bring this back in a bit later. Classic ending questions at the end of any interview is kind of, who else could I talk to? So this really helps you with getting warm interest for other people to talk to. Very often, if you talk to people, they'll refer you to other people that they know that also do this, or that might be interested, and it just makes that follow-up conversation a little bit easier. It's called snowballing. And then it does introduce bias, so you've got to be careful, but it can be very useful. And then, is there anything else that I should have asked? You can ask them. Is there something that you would have liked to? I don't use these words, but I would have said, is there anything else that you think I should have asked about that I didn't, or that you want to share with me? And then keeping quiet for a long time to give them time to process that and eventually answer. That's important. So it's about the interviewing techniques. So just general tips. You want to attack your most fundamental assumptions. So in this business model that you've built, and that's why I think in the week to come, articulating your business model to some degree, all of the elements of it is important, because a lot of the interview questions will give you valuable feedback on your core value proposition, as well as in your target segmentation. But it may also have implications on the feature set that you need to do, which in turn has implication on the partnering or the cost structure that you have, their willingness to pay. And it might also have a big impact on your channel that you use to either reach people or deliver your product or service. So and you want to attack those fundamental assumptions. You don't want to play it safe in these interviews. You want to avoid premature zooms. So don't get into super low level details. Do you like the button like this? Do you like this color? You really want to create context and ask open-ended questions and be very exploratory and keep it casual. People think they have to set up these appointments and it needs to be a big thing. I do customer interviews in 60 seconds while I'm standing in the line sometimes, and I get more insight from that because it's real people talking about real things. People love it because you talk about their problems. People like to talk about their problems. Yes, it's good to have structured things as well, but the biggest problem I see is that people have one interview a week because they call around and try and set up, half an hour, and it's like you've already lost people like that. You can have 10 interviews, in a week, and, sometimes it'll be 10 minutes. Sometimes you'll start with 5 minutes and it'll just naturally progress to a half-an-hour discussion. So just try to keep it casual. Seek commitment or advancement. So find something that they can actually commit on or advance on. Sometimes it means, in other words, it's kind of like a form of payment. So if you're not ready yet to sell it, take a, you could take a pre-order. And that's why a question like, would you be willing to pay is useless. You could ask, I've got an order form here for pre-ordering with a discount of X. Would you be willing to place an order at this time? 99% of the people will say no. It's just to be expected. It's fine. Then you can say, what would I need to do? What would I need to have to make you do this? That's a good question to ask. Now you're getting real feedback, because you can see how they're kind of backing themselves up in a corner. And you want to push to the point of pain. You really need to get to the point where they say, no, thanks, no, because then you get the truth. When you actually get people to have to say no to you, then at that point of pain, the truth emerges. And it's not attacking you. Don't take it personally. That, it's you're just curious, and it's great to know, and it's great to learn. I'll even sometimes, if I'm personally involved in the startup, or even if I do it for corporate customers, sometimes I'll just say that I'm an agent for them. I'm not personally involved in this. I'm doing this exercise. They're paying me to find out more about what people's problems are. So I decouple myself from that. They don't have to try and impress me. They don't have to worry that they're going to, insult me in any way. If they say something that's, really interesting, I'll laugh and I'll agree with them, even if it's my own idea. And in the inside, I'm crying, I'm dying, because I thought it was great, but it turns out that it's not for them. And you move on and thank them for the time. Finding people, so you can go to them. There's a kind of like the outbound strategy. Cold calls for me don't work really well. It depends on what you're doing and whether you know some people, if you've got a kind of network. Emails work surprisingly well. If I find somebody and I can write to them, there's a format that you can read up on in the mom test, where they kind of, you put them on you level with what you're trying to achieve, say to them why you need their help, ask them if they could answer a couple of questions. And very often if they respond to the email, that gives you that opportunity to follow up on a call. So email does actually work quite well. I actually quite like that. But yeah, you can just be lucky standing in a row where people are and you can talk to them. So that's fine. That's why you've got to be able to do this informally as well. And then you can go to where they are. There's some of these people congregate at certain places. You can ambush them digitally or physically. If you go to where they are, you want to put out a hook or a link or something in the emails that you have, or if they congregate in Facebook groups and you put on ads there, that's also going to them digitally. Then you want to have a link where they can maybe fill out a landing form or a kind of a survey or something like that. You can bring them to you as well, so you can pull. This normally means content. So you've got to arrange meetups or some sort of events, speaking events, that sort of thing. Blog or write articles and ask for opinions on those. So you build up a following, and then they get to know you, and then that's the way that you can meet people as well. It'll depend on what works for you, and then also always try and get those warm intros. That's why I ask, is there anybody else I can speak to? Because that snowballing effect makes all the difference. What's not nice is sending 100 emails and speaking to 2 people. Warm intros change that a lot. You would rather go slower, rather go with warm intros and then get a higher percentage of responses. Okay, that was it. Very short and sweet, but this is, you can go on endlessly about this. You really need to talk to people every day for the next year. It's not something that's going to stop. Most of you are on a fairly idea stage. I understand that some of you have sent out surveys. I promise you, if you ever want to do a customer survey and invite one of the mentors to go with you so that they actually do it with you or for you, for example. That's one way in which we can be of service. There's great YouTube videos. Rob Fitzpatrick, the author of this book, but there's 1 or 2 other people as well that just actually do it in front of you. They actually pick up the phone, they call people and they do it. And I can really recommend that you actually look at one of those 2 things and just get going. Speak to 1 or 2 people, reflect, go through these notes from tonight, think about what you did wrong and what you did right, and try and ignore all the false, vanity kind of likes and compliments, and just get back to what their problem is and what the insight that you've gained and the challenges to your business model, and think about how you have to adapt that going forward. think that's me. Thank you.